Perfect. Okay, we've got the recording on. All right, so if you guys, if everyone can hear, and maybe turn on your camera just for a quick second to say hi, so I know that you're actually, yay, I see Melody and Tony. Ryan, I know was here, but then I think he jumped off and I can't see. Oh, there's Ryan, perfect. And then Daryl, perfect. And Maggie, just to see that we have live people. I like.
Heidi is here. She just doesn't want the
Perfect.
camera on her.
That's all good. We don't have to have the cameras on. We're going to give it all over to Eric, and I'm going to let him introduce himself and go from there.
Awesome. Well, thanks, guys, for joining me this evening here. I know everybody's got a lot of things going on across the world here. So, yeah, I'm Eric King. I live in Ohio here. Work for a company called Umbarger Show Feeds, which is out of Indiana, just south Indianapolis, local family-owned company. And I've worked for that company for about 17 years now. So cover quite the geographical area. I spend most of my time in Ohio, but Pennsylvania, Michigan, everything kind of east is a lot in my territory. But I've went as far as California, even down to Florida, and done feed clinics and things like that. So kind of cover quite the geographical area with our company, but there's only 3 of us or 3.5 of us that do what I do. And so we get to talk to a lot of individuals across the country, and it's really unique and really fun. So looking forward to sharing a little bit of information here with you guys tonight. So yeah, I will see if we can do this and share now, maybe.
You should have a little one that you can share.
It says present, but I'm not sure if that's.
Yep, that's it. You just click on that present button, and then it'll move your camera off of your face and put it onto your screen, I think.
Okay. It's just trying to figure out. There we go.
Okay.
There we go. Everybody see that? I hope.
We see it. We can see your whole thing instead of a slideshow. I wonder if you press slideshow in that top section. It's kind of after animations.
I need to switch
your window, maybe.
Probably need to swap. There we go. Maybe. Does that look better?
Yes, we can still see the slide deck on the side. It looks like up your toolbar on the top where it says File Home Insert. If you keep going across, it says Slideshow.
I'm seeing my total deal.
Well, we can see the screen that says Drive It, Lead It, and Brace It.
Okay. Well, you shouldn't be seeing that now. It's interesting. So we should be on another slide. Sharing a window.
Is it a PowerPoint?
Yeah, it is here. It was acting like it was doing it for me, but it's not. So
if you maybe email to me, I can present. Well, I should be able to present it from my end, but
I don't know why it's doing that. And it's acting like it's doing that on there, but it's not doing that on there. Probably can't see it now, can you?
We can see just the main one in the middle, and then we see the slides on the side.
I apologize for this. Should be a better way here to do this. Present something else. Entire screen. How about that? Whoa. That don't seem right.
Now we see all of us there. Yeah.
Can you see? Let's try that. Can you see that now?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So you have Drive It, Lead It, Brace It on there now.
Yes, that's what we got.
All right. Perfect. Okay. That's fabulous. Now we got goals. Right?
Yes.
Okay, now we're good to go. All right. So really, as I start a lot of these deals, and I do them all across in different stages and different areas, the first thing I really get into is getting kids to list their goals of their project, and this doesn't necessarily matter for a 4-H project. This is for life in general and sporting teams and things like that. But you really need to list your goals of what your project is and what you're really setting out to do, whether it's your sheep or goats or whatever your project is. Make those goals achievable, write those things down, and then work every day to achieve those goals is the idea. Make those goals within reason. If you want to win the fair, you want to win the show, you want to win a class, you want to win showmanship, you want to place in the showmanship, all that stuff. Make those goals that were relative and we're working towards every day. But then when we get done, first and foremost, you need to reflect on your goals and see what you did and see what you didn't do to achieve those goals. Because if we don't reflect and see what, our victories and our triumphs were, and then where our downfalls were, we can't get any better on next year. And reviewing our goals is very important. So we kind of continue to go through those things. So next thing I get into, ideally, is project management. This time of year, there's a lot of animals that are being bought and traded and sold and raised and picked out and things like that. We need to make sure we're picking the right animal that's right for us and right for your project. You don't want to pick a goat that's maybe, just being born now to go to a July fair. Something like that. We're just not going to get big enough and not enough days on feed to achieve our goal where we're at. So we need to understand breed characteristics and traits of these animals. Understand, an average daily gain of a specific breed or an animal really helps us as we pick those projects out. Definitely starting from the ground up too is ideal. Having a solid foundation and a solid base about our animals is ideal. If we don't have good structure, that's something we're generally not going to fix as the project goes along and gets better. Another thing we look at is previous generations of that animal. We always want to be looking at seeing if there was maybe a sister or a brother in the previous years that was out of the same cow or pig or doe or ewe or something like that we can kind of base our opinion off of. If they've done very well, or maybe they haven't done very well, they've gotten to a certain point and just faltered and not made the right decision to go with that animal. And then ask for help. And we'll talk more about building help and working with your team later on and who your team might be and things like that. But, asking for help is never a problem. This is a team sport, in my opinion. Showing livestock is a team sport, and we've got a lot of help, and we can talk about more of that here in a little bit. Project management is another thing that I like to talk about. And guys, you can build your pens and barns and things any way you like them. Doesn't really matter. We've had some different setups over the years, and we're continuously changing setups and things like that. But know your environment, know your climate, things like that. Colorado is a little different than it is here in Ohio. And we deal with customers down in Florida and out in California as well. We need to have different environments and different climates. There is key. So one thing you will see in all these pictures of these barn setups is air ventilation and airflow. The picture on the bottom right, that's an old corn crib. And if you guys out there in Colorado don't understand what that is, but used to store ear corn in these barns there on the sides, and it dried. The wind was directed essentially to blow straight through those barns, and most times they were facing the west and open, and that was done mainly for airflow. But what you'll see in all these pens is fans, and airflow is definitely important, especially as we get in the warmer months. But having fresh air on these guys and ventilation is huge and key. We don't want to have any lung issues and things like that can build up. Bedding choices. There's a lot of different bedding choices that you can make, but one of those, you just need to make sure it's fresh and clean and a space for our animals to get into shelter and rest, obviously. So another one of the things that we always kind of highlight is feeder height. And not so much on the sheep and the goats, but we talk about the pigs and the cattle quite a bit. I struggle with feeding those things on the ground all the time, just because they have to bend over so far and they have to stretch so far. And it puts a strain and stress on their back and their joints and things like that as they try to get down on their tippy toes and reach to the bottom of their snout and to the ground and really work on that feed. So we try to elevate those feeders just a little bit so they can be at a normal height. But we don't want to get too high on those things because those animals do have to have their nose kind of facing towards the ground to get that feed up to them. They have to provide the amount of saliva coming down their throat and things like that as they eat to also bring it back with them and essentially swallow that food. So if we get it too high, they actually can't bring that saliva up and get it where it needs to be down through their throat and on into their rumen and things like that. So just some things to think about as we set up barns and stuff. Airflow and ventilation is obviously key here. So another thing I like to talk about is water. Water is the most important nutrient that we have, and animals can survive on water, and we can survive on water for a long time as well too. But water is important for transportation of our vital nutrients throughout the body. It's vital for lubrication of our joints. It's also part of heat regulation, chemical reaction, and every nerve transmission in the body. Okay, so you can pick your water any way you want to do it. There's lots of different types and kinds. I've got a pig one here on the bottom left, and I struggle with that one just because a lot of times guys will fill up or kids will fill up that water tank and it'll sit there for days on end, and that water becomes pretty stale and stagnant and kind of gross as they get towards the end. The top right is a pig nipple water. Some guys like those and some guys don't like those. One of the advantages of those is you can actually see how much your pig is drinking throughout the day. Obviously, if they're wasting it on the ground, you're not going to notice that. But one of the disadvantages there is it just doesn't have enough pressure either to get enough water into those animals. So they stand there a long time to try to take a drink, and oftentimes they don't get enough water into their system. And then the Ritchie fountain there on the bottom right is very nice as well too. But that usually fits a bigger livestock scale and not just our 4-H projects. So sometimes we get into those and sometimes we don't. But moving on, we talk a little bit more about water. I go on a lot of farm visits and a lot of places and things like that. And I've seen 2 tanks that look exactly like these tanks on the right-hand side. And those are extreme and they are pretty gross. But I have ran into those things, and those are not ideal for our livestock and what we're after. So we need to make sure we're cleaning these tanks and getting them scrubbed up at least once a week, with some sort of soap or bleach even. But is your tank dirty? Does it have mold or algae in it? We can also have chlorine water versus well water if anybody's close to a city or things like that. As we go to a lot of these fairs and shows, oftentimes the county fairgrounds are in the city limits and they drink off of essentially chlorinated water. So that can be a change for our animals too, which can provide a little bit of a challenge for us. Some people deal with sulfur water and a different kind of an odor in our water. So as we bring these animals in, those changes can definitely affect our water intake on our animals. And then also water pH. I always ask kids during the meetings and things I do in person if anybody has tested their water pH on their water at home. And generally I get no by that because it's just nobody takes the time to do it. And why is that important? That is very important in our small species, especially our sheep and our goats, because the water pH level can change throughout the year, and that can also affect what we've got going on and things like that. So different mineral depositation in our water can change things as well. So that's something we kind of suggest maybe even putting a filter on our water systems and things like that. And we'll talk more about a little bit of these things and why that's important here in a little bit as well too. But it's just things to think about as we go through our project. So the most important thing is to keep that water fresh and clean, and those tanks obviously scrubbed up and clean and ready to go. So this is a slide that is relative to the cattle. But I also attribute it to our smaller species as well. But I always go down to the bottom part of the slide here because it's the most impactful part of it. So if this is on a steer project, and I know a lot of you guys don't have any cattle projects, but we'll put this into perspective in just a minute. So 1,000-pound steer, if we open the tap and the hydrant right now, generally most of us are going to get 40-degree water coming out of that tap. Okay, so that steer will drink about 8.7 gallons of water a day, which is just shy of 2 buckets of water. You think that's a lot, and that probably it's adequate, we'll say. But if we warmed that water up to about 70 degrees, he would drink about 12.6 gallons of water a day. That's almost 4 gallons more water he drinks a day. And that is vitally important because all that water is important with all those systems that we just talked about here. And I'm not really saying, go out there and warm your water up to 70 degrees and have it for them as a warm cup of cocoa. But the idea is to not be out there breaking the ice and the water, especially during these winter months and things like that, because that animal has to spend a lot of energy to warm that 40-degree water up so the animal can use that water in their system. They have to warm it up to almost 100 degrees so their body can utilize that. So it takes a lot more energy and takes a lot more calories to do that on a daily basis. So I always kind of suggest to kids to get a tank heater or things like that, or insulate their tank if possible, just to help that water out and not make it so bitter and freezing cold throughout the season. So if we attribute this back to our smaller species, a 50-pound goat or a 40-pound sheep or something like that, they're not drinking near as much. And that's very crucial because they're not going to drink near as much. So we want to get as much water into those things as possible on a daily basis, because we are fighting some other things, and we're going to talk about that more, as I said, here in a minute. But offering some warmer water for those guys in their pens, to make sure they're getting enough water into themselves a day is very important, in my opinion. So just something to think about as we get these projects in. So planning ahead is always my next thing. For challenges and consideration during your project. If obviously you guys have went through a little bit of weather here again recently, and it's kind of coming our way here in Ohio, the way it sounds. So those are some challenges that we face. But then we also look forward to our summer months when it gets a little warmer, especially here in the Midwest. So we kind of forecast some of those challenges and changes that we may face, and we may feed our animals accordingly throughout the season to plan ahead for those changes. Because if it's going to get really hot, obviously our animals are not going to want to eat as much. And then if it's really, really cold through the winter months, we need to feed more feed because it takes more calories to put more weight on these animals. So try to plan ahead and forecast these challenges that we may see coming ahead for us and the days that we have left on feed. So just something to think about as you guys go throughout your project here as well. So we talked about that just a second ago here. Feed intake is relatively constant between 59 and 77 degrees. Your animal is at an equilibrium. That is the perfect temperature for your animals to be very, very efficient. So everything that they're taking in, they don't have to expel extra energy to stay cool. They don't have to take in extra calories to essentially stay warm and things like that. And that's what that bottom of that slide shows you here as well. Feed intake essentially increases, or the need for feed intake increases below 59 degrees as the maintenance requirements increase for your animal. It takes a lot more energy to keep that animal warm on a daily basis and maintain bodily function. And then once we get above 77 degrees, your maintenance requirement decreases because the high respiration, we're trying to actually get rid of heat and get rid of it. And that's where those fans come into play, and very important as it gets warmer, as we try to move some air through these animals to keep them cooler. So we keep them a little closer to that 59 to 77 degrees so we stay on feed and stay constant. Okay. So we talk a little bit about stress, different times throughout the year. There's lots of causes of stress. Obviously, we cause our animals a lot of stress from different times. And these can be not limited to, but include all of the following. Weaning process, as you wean your project, or if you've bought it, they've already been weaned and stressed throughout there. Deprived feed water intake, that can just be as simply as feeding at a different time, or feeding a different schedule than maybe we have been, or hauling them. Transportation, that's a cause of stress. Environmental changes, whether that be a new barn or a new setting, maybe a new pen mate, things like that. Crowding, if we put too many animals in a pen and we don't have enough space for them to get to feeders or waters, that can cause stress and things like that. And some animals will not fight for themselves and not get up there and go. Vaccinations are also vitally important, but also causes of stress. And then new feed and water. Not all water is created equal, as we talked about a little bit earlier. And all feed is different as well too. So those can be causes of stress and cause your animals to go off a feed or change and challenge in what they're doing. So just things to think about as we go through our project. So how do your animals use their nutrients that they can consume on a daily basis? And this is exactly how we consume and utilize our nutrients that we consume every day. So when the animal takes their first bite of feed every day, they essentially have to fill their maintenance requirement. Okay, so if you attribute all these things on the right-hand side to buckets, their first bucket they have to fill is a maintenance bucket. Okay, they have to consume enough calories and enough energy on a daily basis to maintain their bodily function. And that's heart respiration, that's breathing, that's lungs, that's blood flow, extremities, all that kind of stuff, blinking their eyes. Then the next thing they'll do once they fill that maintenance requirement is the development bucket. And then after that will be the growth bucket. See, so they have to continue to consume enough calories and things to grow and develop. Then we'll get down into lactation and reproduction on our breeding side of things. But the very last thing your animal will do on a daily basis is, if they're consuming enough calories, is put fat on, okay, or condition, as we say. So that's a lot of questions I get sometimes is, why is my animal not putting enough condition on? Why are we not getting where we need to be? Well, we're not consuming enough calories, or we're not putting enough into our animals to essentially put enough in their buckets to fill them up and get them fat. And then on the other side of things, sometimes we're getting them overly conditioned and overly fat that we need to back off and slow down on those calories and make sure we're not putting any extra fat on that we don't want. Okay. So we talk about building your team, and I talked about it earlier as building your team and who to work with as you guys set your goals and things like that. And I tell kids, this is your dream team. This is your fantasy draft here. You can pick anybody that you want to. The only thing you can't pick is your family. You're kind of stuck with who's on your family team there on most times. Okay, so you can pick your breeder. Obviously, you can deal with a new breeder, whether you are buying livestock from somebody or not. You can choose to where you buy your livestock from at all times. You got a veterinarian choice. You utilize a different veterinarian. Maybe there's a couple of them in the area. You can pick and choose who you've got and who you work with. Feed dealers. There's a lot of feed dealers out there in the country, and feed representatives. You can pick and choose who you want to work with and who you trust on that side of things. 4-H and FFA advisors. You can work with those guys and FFA leaders or 4-H leaders as well. So you can join different clubs and organizations, and you can kind of pick who you want to work with and who you're happy with there. And like I said before, your family is kind of who you got, but they are a vital part of your team, because this is not done alone. You guys have to have a family to get there and where you're going. So we'll talk a little bit more about your veterinarian for a minute. I always ask kids, what does it cost to call your veterinarian? Really, it doesn't cost it really doesn't cost anything to call your veterinarian to start with. Okay. I always suggest kids should call their veterinarian when they get their project. And why is that? Because we need to develop a plan and get a game plan for the year. And whether that being a worming schedule, a vaccination schedule, but I really suggest they schedule a visit with their veterinarian right off the get-go, because your animal or your veterinarian can come out and see your place, understand the projects that you have, and kind of go over what you've got going on. Okay, then they can also know the fair protocol and what you need to have done before certain dates of when you're headed to the fair. Okay, and then the most important thing is, in my opinion, is having an after-hours plan, because none of these animals seem to get sick between 8 to 5. They always get sick between 5 and 8, right? Middle of the night, weekends, things like that. That's when you notice these animals generally being sick for some reason. So you need to have that plan with that veterinarian. And if you call him up in the middle of the night and you've got a major issue and he didn't even know you had livestock, then we've got probably another issue, and he'll probably just see you in the morning. But if we've already had that guy to our place or woman to our place, generally we can call them and they'll come out and be available to us, because we've already set that plan in place and we've got that. You know, you've communicated with them, and you've got a cell phone number, you've got an emergency line number that you can call or text or work with, or maybe they'll visit with you and they trust you enough to convey the messages that you need, or you can FaceTime them and things like that and show them the animal, and they may not have to make the trip out. So that's something to think about as we set your plan and have that in place right off the get-go. Make sure you communicate with those guys and know what you got. Okay. Next thing is the calendar. And I always, in person, I always ask the kids, how many days is it until your event? Okay. How many days is it until your fair? And 9 times out of 10, I'll see kids out there on their hands and taking their shoes off and kind of counting on their toes and how many days it is till their event. And why is that important? That is vitally important because we need to know every day how many days we have left to achieve our goal. Okay. I really suggest kids get a calendar and write down from day 0, and that's the day they move into their event, to all the way back to today. So if it's 120 days, 140 days, whatever it is, every time you go to the barn, you can see exactly how many days you have to the fair, the show, the event. This also helps us as we weigh our animals and record our vaccinations on that calendar, because as we do 4-H projects and FFA books and things like that, we need this information to record in those for withdrawal times and things like that. This is also important information that we can have available to our vet if there is a situation or have to have him out, because you need to know the possible days left on medication and withdrawals that need to be passed in those situations. So having that information readily available to you on a daily basis always comes in handy. So know how many days we got to the fair and the event, and having a calendar for those things is very helpful. Okay. Regular evaluation of your project. I like to track weights and information all the time, and it's very simple now. You digitally record all this stuff. But I like to also video or picture everything within every 30 days, if at minimal. Sometimes we'll do it on a weekly basis. Sometimes we'll do it on a bi-weekly basis. But it's nice to take a video or a picture of those animals when you're out practicing, because those animals look different on a different view on the phone or from the side profile than they do when we're showing them. As the showman, it's hard to see a lot of those changes and things that you think you're doing, but you're probably not doing from a different vantage point. So if you can have somebody take a picture or video of you while you're practicing, that's going to help you out as well too. Okay. It's never been easier to log on to some of these shows now, whether it's Show Barn Flicks or Walton Webcasting or any of those, and watch a livestock show, which is really unique. And a lot of times we'll even have our kids go back and watch some of those after we get done and kind of critique what we've done and maybe what we can improve on and things like that. But one thing what also the videos will do is I utilize those as a feed representative. I've had a lot of people that send me those, and I get to look at those and kind of save those. And then I project to where we're going from the next 30 days as well too. And in some feed changes and some challenges that maybe we're facing, we're going to try to project those next 30 days and see where we're trying to get to. Okay. So make sure we're taking videos and keeping those and kind of looking back and referencing where we've been and where we're going to kind of head to next. So as a feed representative, these are a lot of the questions that I'll ask you or ask the kids as they ask for advice in different times. You know, obviously, what is your project? What is your target show? What's your animal's current weight? What are they currently eating? What's their current ration? Genetics of that animal. What's the current condition of your animal? If I don't have a picture or a video of them, we'll ask the kids what they think or the families what they think. What's your goals for the project? Is it to win the class, win the fair, win the show, make weight, things like that? And then one that's vitally important as well too is, when was your animal last wormed? I think that's vitally important as we project in some of these animals. We're not getting enough worming done on some of these animals, so make sure that's something we record and we can kind of relay to our team from different times is the answers to any of these questions at any time. Okay, so these are just things that I would ask our 4-Hers and our kids as they ask for advice and help. So just things to be thinking about as we go forward. Okay, so typical feeding rates, and you guys are welcome. A lot of people will screenshot this and save this, and we can send that to you all by all means as well too. But these are just typical feeding rates for our livestock. Cattle, sheep, and goats, and we put some examples down there below. You can do the simple math, but for sheep and goats, it's generally between 3% and 4%, and even goats will probably even raise that to 4 or 5 sometimes, just to push them along a little bit more. So just something to think about and measure out as we talk about weighing feed and feeding livestock and things like that. We get a lot of questions about goats sorting feed from time to time and why they do that. And generally it's because we're overfeeding those things. Okay, we're offering them too much, and we just think that goat should eat more. Well, he's only 60 pounds or 75 pounds, and he's probably really only need to be eating anywhere from 2.25 to 3 pounds a day. So we need to kind of remember that and split that into 2 feedings per day. So a lot of times overfeeding is done, like I said before. Okay. So feed versus feed, we'll talk a little bit about my side of things here just a little bit as we go through as well too. There's a lot of different feed choices out there in the world. Guys can get feed from a lot of different companies, I'm sure. But the most important thing you need to think about when feeding a feed is it palatable? Do your animals want to eat it on a daily basis? Do they continue to come to the feeder on a daily basis and drive for that feed and want that feed? Or do they walk up there and like, oh, well, same old again today, huh? And if they're not eating that feed and it's not palatable, they're not going to be very efficient. They're not going to get the digestibility out of that feed. Okay, they're not going to put the gain on that we're asking them to. They're not going to look the way they need to look. And we do those things, and we make obviously a palatable feed. But one of those things that we do is we use clean quality grain. Okay, we sort our grain. We make sure it's clean and fresh and obviously toxin free and mold free and all that kind of stuff. So it's relative, and the animals want to eat it on a daily basis, and it is very palatable. Okay. So we talk a little bit about the Umbarger side, just a little bit here. I like to do a lot of education up front, but then we'll talk a little bit about my side of the world, I guess, as well as we say. So a little bit about Umbarger and who they are and things like that. And most people probably in Colorado don't know who the Umbarger family is or Umbarger show feeds are. But we are a family-owned 4th-generation feed company that we were developed essentially. We made rations for the showman by the showman. Okay, we had guys that came to us throughout the years and still coming to us now. And hey, we need to make this. Hey, we need to make that. Have you guys ever thought about doing this? And that's how all of our business has changed and evolved. Essentially, we are a show feed only company. What you see in that picture is what we do. Bagged feed that comes out on a daily basis and gets trucked all the way across the country to users like you guys. We use unique ingredients. We use a lot of different things from spelts to roasted soybeans to black-eyed peas to sunflower seeds. To a lot of barley and things like that. So we've also got more options than any other company in our opinion, and we do that for a certain reason. We do that because there is so many different kinds of livestock and types of livestock all across the country that we deal with. We need those options for all those kids. And then we're also here for you. The U stands for the Umbarger, but also you, the feeder, and you, the customer, as well. We are here for everybody, no matter whether you buy 1 bag or 10 bags or 1,000 bags a month. We're here for you because you are our customer. We want to serve you guys. So different choices. We obviously have a lot of different choices in feeds, and I'll kind of talk briefly about the goats and the sheep because I think that's what we wanted to highlight tonight. But these are choices that we have to make throughout the years as we talk about feeding athletes and different types of livestock. They all get kind of fed different. You may have 2 sheep that weigh 60 pounds, but we may feed them both a little bit different. You may have 2 goats that weigh 100 pounds. We may feed them both a little bit different. Just depends on how they look. Maybe their genetics, their age, their timeline, what we're focusing on. And then, of course, the end goal is always in mind. Okay, so that's a little bit of a brief 1-pager deals on our sheep program, but we'll kind of dig into that just a second here. We've got a couple creep options for our sheep customers as they raise some sheep. We've got a 19% creep and an 18% creep, depending on what customers are trying to utilize there as well. We've also got a 19% growing starter ration. I always attribute this to first gear in our sheep lineup. It's a very easy, steady, growing type ration. There's no kind of frills about it. We're not going to push too hard. We can use it kind of start to finish on a lot of our sheep. But if we want to kick it up a gear in a second gear, we'll utilize the ration Lamb 17 with barley. And if you guys understand what barley does, barley is like putting a glove on your hand, as we attribute to laying down finish and cover on livestock. So if we put a glove on our hand, it essentially attribute your hand to being the muscle. Put that glove on top of it. That is the finish that we are going to put on that muscle. It's going to be perfectly smooth and perfectly wrapped right around that muscle. And that's what we're trying to do on a lot of these sheep and goats as well as some of our other livestock. So we utilize a lot of barley in a lot of our diets because of that finish that it puts on. Okay. So then we have a couple other things. So we've got a 16%, which I attribute to third gear. That's a high fat, high calorie ration that we can kind of play catch up with those as well. Then we have a change up, which is an oat hay canary grass. Some guys will utilize that for an extra fiber type product for our livestock as well. Okay. Then we have some top dresses, and I won't get into all these, but I will just caution you guys on top dresses. We've got a lot of people that come to us and say, hey, we want to use a top dress. And we say, what do you need to top dress? Well, we feel like we need to top dress something. We're missing something. Well, what do you need? They don't really even know what they need. They just think they're missing something at some point. But really understand and understand what these top dresses do and what you're after. Whether you're after an appetite top dress, whether you're after a mineral top dress, a fat conditioning top dress, or a fat burner, a joint supplement, what you're really after. Make sure you're doing your homework and understand what those supplements do, and don't just feed them just because you feel like you're missing something. Okay. So we've got a couple examples of some sheep up here for you guys to understand and look at. Sheep on the left is very green and very raw, kind of behind the 8 ball. Probably need to play catch up just a little bit and get up and get going. So that one would be a great candidate for our lamb 16, maybe our 17 if we're kind of playing long term, but definitely needs to play catch up and is very green and raw in its condition. The blue sheep in the middle, typically harder doing natural colored sheep are. A lot of these sheep, same kind of way here. We're going to play a little bit harder and feed them a little bit harder. Great candidate for our lamb 17 or even our 16 if we're kind of in a hurry to catch up. Then the lamb on the right, or the ewe on the right here, she's in plenty of condition. She's been showed a good bit. She probably doesn't need a whole lot more calories. She needs to kind of be limited on what she's doing. She's on the end of the spectrum, so we would kind of stay on that 19 and try to just kind of cut her back and kind of coast her along here. So she just doesn't need as much feed and as much calories as we talk. Okay. Some more goat and sheep feeding tips as we talk. Use a consistent feed cup and weigh your feed. That is vitally important because everybody's feed cups and scoops are different. You guys can probably tell me, hey, we're feeding 2 cups of feed. Well, how big is your cup? I'm not really sure how big your cup is versus how big my cup is. Okay, so getting a weight on those cups is vitally important, and everybody's scoop is different from time to time. If that bag is new and fresh, we're getting a big deep scoop out of it and it's packed in there, versus that bag is almost empty and it's really kind of scrummaging around to fill that cup. It's probably going to weigh a tenth or a quarter pound difference, maybe, depending on what we're packing in there. Okay, wet feeding. A lot of people will wet feed their animals to start with or start mid-season. And why is that important? That's important to get more water and more intake into these animals. As we try to hydrate these animals, especially as we get closer to shows, wet feeding is vitally important. It also helps with us as we try to limit feed as well. We try to slow these things down just a little bit. As we make that feed a little bit more mushy and harder to eat, it can kind of slow them down. They can't eat it near as fast and less choking hazards and things like that. So as we limit some feed, especially like on that big ewe, we would slow her down on feed. Well, I bet she would inhale her feed within about 3 minutes. So if we wet that feed, it's going to take a lot longer for her to eat and less chance she's going to choke. Hay, we need a lot of hay on these animals nowadays. They are ruminant animals. We still need to offer a free forage hay for those guys and be available at all times. Free choice minerals, it's a great option to offer a free choice mineral for our sheep and goats at all times. We can only put so much in the feed. Most companies can only put so much on the feed. So as we ask these animals to do things for us and work and exercise, they need to meet their mineral requirements as well too. So make sure we're offering a free choice mineral. Some joint care for some animals is always helpful. BOCI, and these are things you can communicate with your vet as well to kind of get a game plan. We may utilize some B12 for an appetite enhancement as well throughout the season. Corid or Toltrazil for coccidiosis is important as well. You guys probably ought to make sure when you're getting your sheep and throughout the season or goats is go ahead and communicate with your vet and get a stool sample of those animals. It's not very expensive, but it can be very helpful for you. A lot of animals are loaded up with coccidiosis and you may not know it. They may appear very healthy and not have an issue, but they may have a good bit of coccidia in them. So that's something that can be treated, especially early on. All animals have coccidia. It's just at what level they have it and what they're doing with it, because that can be really detrimental to our weight gain and our feed gain if we are loaded up with coccidia. Okay. Another things guys will do is put some electrolytes in the water throughout the season. Essentially, same thing there to hydrate the muscle and keep essentially intake going, especially as we get into some of those warmer months. If we see a big warm spell coming, we may put some electrolytes in the water just to make sure we're getting enough into those things and keeping them hydrated and fresh. Okay. Some more tips. We talked about ammonium chloride. We put ammonium chloride in feed to a certain level. Same kind of deal there. We can only put so much in. Well, we found out over the years and through some university testing that our sheep and goats can actually change their rumen pH to overcome our ammonium chloride. Okay, so if we put so much in and they play catch up to it, then our ammonium chloride essentially is not active and not working at that point. So what we'll do is we'll pulse dose some ammonium chloride every 10 days to 2 weeks to 20 days. We'll take a small pinch of ammonium chloride and kind of drop it in there on them, and that will essentially put them on a roller coaster ride that they can't ever catch up to. So if we spike that level every 10 days to 2 weeks, that will be helpful for our system and our animals, and they won't ever, well, we hopefully won't have issues with that as well either. Mites, you guys make sure you're checking for mites and bugs and things like that, utilizing Ivomec and Prolate. And again, like I said, this is a veterinarian thing, but it's stuff you guys need to be thinking about. Different wormers, like I said, taking a manure sample in there and we're working with our vet. Watch for staph and watch for fungus, because that never shows up until we're ready to go to a fair or a show or an event. And then oftentimes we can't show it those things with staph or fungus on us. And then, your work in exercise programs and things like that, that's all to your guys' discretion. But weighing weekly or biweekly is vitally important as we try to track those weights and project to where we're going to for our goals. And then, like I said before, the most important thing is fresh, clean water for us as well. Okay. We talked a bit about ammonium chloride and what does it do and why is it important? Well, ammonium chloride essentially lessens the chance that we're going to have urinary caliculi. And if anybody knows what urinary caliculi is, it's essentially kidney stones. Okay, so there's nothing. Ammonium chloride does not prevent urinary caliculi. It just lessens the chance that they're going to form these stones. Okay, but there are a lot of things in the world other than ammonium chloride that affect kidney stones in these animals, and that can be some of the following, but not limited to calcium phosphate ratio in our minerals. So if we're feeding a mineral, if that's not a good ratio of calcium to phos, we can have issues and mineral buildup and extra depositation in there. Hay quality, if we have something that was over fertilized with a lot of phosphorus and things like that, we can get an overabundance of phosphorus in our animal's body that they can't secrete and can't get rid of. If your animals are early castrated, way too early at their young age, their urethra can't develop fully, and we can have some issues with that. We talked about water quality, mineral depositations and buildup of water or lack of drinking water can also affect that because we're not flushing out the system with enough water. Overfeeding or underfeeding. If we're overfeeding these animals, a lot of times we can get too much into them, or if we're underfeeding, we're not getting enough ammonium chloride in these animals, essentially to break that stuff up either. Okay. Genetics, handling and care, and then of course stress on our animals too can affect urinary caliculi. So a lot of times we get questions from customers and things like that. Their animal has kidney stones, and they always want to question if we have ammonium chloride in our feed. And yes, of course we do. But like I said, these are a lot of different factors that affect that more than just ammonium chloride. Okay, so just a little bit of health and science there for you guys. So this is simply ammonium chloride that you can get at any farm stores. I talked about pulse dosing that at every 10 days to 2 weeks to 20 days, just taking a small pinch of that and throwing it on top of your feed on your animal. It doesn't change anything. There's no withdrawal on it, anything like that. Just to have that available to them will definitely help you out as well. Okay, we'll hit the feeding goats, and we'll probably be about done here for you guys. We've got a couple rations in the goat world. Next Level has some unique ingredients as we talked about things. The sunflower seeds. It also has steam flake corn and cracked corn. Goats are very different in their digestive system. Goats actually metabolize their feed within about 20 minutes of eating. Most people try to attribute a goat to being a small cow or a small steer. They're not even close to that. They're really more related to a deer than a steer. Deer are very lean and long muscled and things like that, and so are our goats. Okay, so we have to give them multiple fat sources that make it different, or make it through the different stages of the body and are picked up in different areas, whether that's the stomach, the intestine, and on down through the system. So that's why Next Level was designed with so many different unique ingredients, because they all make it through the system at different phases. Okay, Prevail is a pelleted goat feed that we've got. Feed's very similar to our Next Level, but it is a pelleted goat option for customers as well. Then we have a creep option and a grower. Very, very simple as well. The creep, obviously, for guys that are creeping baby goats and getting them ready for sales and events and things like that. And then a grower, much like our Lamb 19, just nice, easy, steady growing ration that is kind of very foolproof. Okay. A couple more rations. Fusion is a barley-based goat feed, as we talked about utilizing barley in a lot of our diets. This is one of those. And then Crossfire is a herd pellet, doe pellet, things like that we can utilize on some animals that we're keeping around. Okay. Same thing here on the top dress side. You guys will see it. It looks very similar to the sheep one as well. Like I said, again, just pick your top dresses for what you want to utilize and when you want to utilize them. Okay. Same thing here, feeding goats. We've got two goats. We've got a little overdone kind of chubby goat here on the left, and then a little green guy on the right-hand side. So on the left, we'd probably we'd probably get after a little bit of barley, trying to freshen this goat up here on the left. And then the goat on the right, we're just kind of pushing him along with the Next Level about as hard as we can and getting him through the season and getting him to fair weight and fighting weight from there. Okay. One thing I will hit on here for you guys real quick is a top dress that we have just recently introduced called Bulletproof. And you talk about unique ingredients. This is one of those things. This has got black-eyed peas. This has some rice bran oil. It's got some extra barley. It's got roasted soybeans in it. A little bit of everything. So the idea here is to increase our fat, increase our back shape and rack shape on these sheep and goats, and just being very unique. Okay, so there it goes. Okay, so we'll talk about our website just for a second. As we talk about, we're here for you guys. You guys can review all of our products at any time on our website. This is a picture of our cattle pages, Synergy and Payload. Those are both cattle feeds, and actually the feed that you'll see pictured at the top is that exact feed that we have. So you can actually go on there and see Next Level. You can see Crossfire. You can see Bulletproof and all those. And then you can also read about them. And then at the bottom, you can click and you'll get a video tutorial with those feeds and kind of how they're utilized and things like that. So very unique, different things. Another thing we put on our website as well is a feeding advice page, and this will come in very handy for you guys as you get questions and things like that. You can go to the feeding advice and say this is the goat page that you see right underneath goat. You can click on that and it'll say learn more, and the page on the right that says feeding advice will pop up. You guys can type in your information. You can actually submit pictures and videos and currently what you're doing and then what your questions are. And we will respond of what we would do and what we would suggest. And you can do this per animal. You can do multiple animals at a time, and you can do this as much as you want. So between myself and my coworkers, this is what we do. We try to answer these every day if we can, and make sure we get back to our kids. And that's what we're here for you. You guys can submit these at any time, and we'll get back to you in a very timely manner. But we want to help you with your project in any way we can. Okay. So I guess we'll kind of kick it back here to you guys if I can get out of this. Hopefully, we'll get back to you guys, and you can ask questions if you'd like, and we'll go from there.
Perfect. Thank you, Eric. This is amazing. And I don't know, anybody that's online now have any questions? One question I have really quick is, is there a way for us to tell what products you have at Highway Feed? I know Brock is the one that set us up. And is there any other place that you provide feed?
I wouldn't know what they have out there without, I guess, obviously looking at their stuff and things like that. That would be a call for them. You could call them and ask them. They can get feed essentially in a timely manner. We ship feed out there, I think, every 2 weeks or every week, whenever they need it, essentially. But all of our dealers are listed on our website as well. We've got a dealer locator on there. You can go find their information. So all that is on there as well. Yeah.
Perfect. All right. Does anybody have questions for Eric? Tony, go ahead.
Okay, so Hattie and I had two questions. Hattie's question was, and I know this is somewhere, and we might do this in the class we take with you in a couple weeks, Connie, but how much should they be gaining a day? Goats.
Okay.
And then I guess at least for me, my biggest impetus for being on this call is so that 2 out of the 3 years we've done goats, we have gotten like 3 weeks before fair and panicked because they were super close to weight.
Okay.
And 1 year, I think it was just the goat. Like he was overweight by the time at weigh-in. And then the other 2 years, they were just barely making it. So that's sort of the reason, one of the biggest reasons we're here is, hey, we don't want to panic.
Yeah.
And then, so like, and I guess that was the question of like, how much should they be gaining per week? And is it an exact science?
So,
right?
So typically goats will gain about 1/3 of a pound a day. So if you average that on a daily basis, that's kind of what they'll gain. 2.5 pounds a week, something like that is kind of rough estimate. Now we can try to push that from different times if we can. Now, if we're on the other end of the spectrum, if you have a weight limit that we need to meet, then we can kind of adjust what we're feeding on that daily basis, or we can fill it up with other fibrous material or things like that we don't get the gains that we're really after, and we can kind of fill them up and slow them down. So just depends on which situation you're in, and that's where that feeding advice will come in really handy. You could submit those questions and ask and say, hey, we're at 90 pounds and we still got a month to go. What are we going to do? And we'll be happy to help you with that.
And then I had a question. So we've used I think it's called a textured feed the past couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
And we noticed that they pick through it.
Mm-hmm.
And then they leave one thing. And so then you don't want to starve them, but you keep feeding them. And then you have a whole pile of corn left and they won't eat it. Is that just like my kid doesn't eat broccoli unless there's cheese on it?
That can be the case. Like I said before, that a lot of times we're overfeeding them. So sometimes we need to start with that. Sometimes that feed is not palatable, so they just don't want to eat it regardless. Maybe the corn is not so good. They don't like it, don't like the taste. Maybe it was burnt coming through the drying phase, something like that. So those are things we need to think about. But then that's why we did offer the pelleted option as well. But we need to just make sure we're getting enough into those things on a daily basis. And sometimes the goats will just take a day or two off. They're the most susceptible species to just forget about life for about 2 days. and they need to reset and go that route. So sometimes we will do that. Sometimes we'll change, whether it's next level or we'll go to maybe our grower for a little bit and just kind of give them a different taste or texture for a couple of days and kind of manipulate those changes on us.
Okay.
So you would, I guess my question following on yours would be, so starting off, going with the textured feed versus a pelletized feed. I mean, what's your, again, we're as green as it gets. But going with, I mean, is that your opinion on that?
Yeah, so we've always been a textured feed company, and recently we've put in with our new additions and changes when we built a new mill here over the last 5 years. We've got the pelleting capabilities, but yeah, a textured feed is always a lot better because, like I said, those goats metabolize their feed so fast. And if we smash all those ingredients into a pellet, we've actually had to grind those and make them very small and fine. And then you have to utilize different things to essentially hold that pellet together. So we're putting extra things in that we didn't necessarily really want to hold that pellet together and keep it all bound. So we're getting things that we don't want to just make sure that we're getting the ingredients that we want in there. So we've always been a big textured feed company fan, especially because and then some guys will start with a pelleted creep and things like that, and they'll transition to a textured feed. And usually you have some lag time in there. And when we're taking days off of feed during the important growing phase of that animal, we can really be a detriment to our system, essentially. So if you just attribute to taking a teenage kid or teenage boy off of calories for about a month, what's he going to do? He's not going to build muscle. He's not going to grow, and he's not going to develop as they transition to a different product. So if you attribute that to our goats, we take a week off in that growing phase. We're missing some vital time of development. So we're big textured feed company fans, but we do offer a pellet for those situations too.
Oh, perfect. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
I have a question. What type of electrolytes would you recommend?
There's a lot of different ones that you can offer and utilize, whether that's like a blue light. We've got a VitaCharge or a liquid boost product that we offer as well that gets liquid Amiferm into these animals. Just something to feed those stomach bugs and hydrate that muscle. You can even go with just something simple, over-the-counter stuff that you get at your farm stores, Resorb, things like that. So it's not something you have to do, but when we have some weather events and challenges, that's something we kind of try to plan ahead for and make sure we're getting enough into those animals on a daily basis.
Does that help with the transition, like after your transportation and you bring them to a new environment?
Yep, definitely can. Absolutely. As we're preparing to go to a show or event or something like that, that is definitely something. And then also that helps if we've had that stuff in our water and then we go to a show or an event that has a different water source and we put that stuff in there, it's still going to smell and taste the same with those goodies in there. So that's always beneficial for us too.
Thank you.
I have another question regarding hay and alfalfa. And so I know they're the ruminant animals, they need to constantly be nibbling on that stuff.
Yeah.
Is that where you're always keeping a little bit in there, or are you pulling it from time to time? I mean, what's your personal take on that?
We won't necessarily keep it in there all the time. We'll offer some of it to them every night, a good handful of it or so. And it doesn't have to be anything that's really rich in calories or strong in alfalfa. They can get a little bit out of it, but we don't need them consuming all their calories in their hay. We would rather have them eat their feed and have that roughage fiber source for the hay and keeping that Roman mat going in there that grain has to filter through their body.
So you'd probably stay away from the richer alfalfa and probably just stay with more prairie grass or mountain grasses we have up here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
To add to his question, we have horses on our property. Do you know if we could feed them the same type of hay? We're getting sheep specifically.
Yeah, I would say so for sure. I mean, I guess I would suppose that'd be the okay thing to do. Yeah.
Great, thanks.
Anybody else?
So one of the last slides, you said something, and I'm sorry if I sound, well, we are super naive still, but free choice minerals, what does that mean? I don't even know what that means.
So we offer a line of minerals from the company Biozyme, but their branded product in the sheep and goat world is called Durafirm, and you can get any mineral, a Purina mineral or whatever, but just offering an extra mineral feeder, whether it's just an extra hanging feeder or whatever you're feeding feed in, but putting a small scoop or essentially a cup or two of mineral in there to have those animals to have access to it all the time.
So all the time they have
Yeah,
access to
yeah,
it.
yep, absolutely, all the time. So they can get their mineral maybe on the different side of a pen if possible than their water. So they kind of go back and forth. It's not something we necessarily need them to be eating, but they need to have access to at all times. So yeah, it can just be something as simple as that. Now, generally, a couple sheep or a couple goats, it's going to take them a long time to go through a bag of mineral. I mean, you'd have a bag for a couple years. So it's not something you gotta, or maybe split with a couple other customers or something like that. So just something to have access
That's
to.
that's what I was going to suggest, is that if you maybe talk with a few people, and what we did from my experiences, when those animals needed it, they ate it. When they don't need it, they won't eat it. So that mineral is just there, kind of like if we need more salt or we need less salt, same thing, that they have access to it would be the important part.
Yeah.
I've seen like salt lick blocks. Is that kind of the same thing? Or are you thinking like a loose mineral powder?
This would be more of a loose mineral. A lot of times, some of those just salt blocks aren't enough, or trace mineral blocks aren't enough. This would be a good 2-to-1 calcium phosphate mineral or something like that that's balanced. So yeah, something that's a little more readily available than just your basic stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, and I don't think Wyleco has that, but I know Highway Feed and Silt, they have a variety of some products that you could choose from. And maybe Tractor Supply, but I'm not really sure. I know I've seen a couple little things in Glenwood, but we don't have a lot of places close by us, Eric. So we have to travel a little bit. And
I got
same
you.
with our vets. We're limited on vets that will see our livestock animals.
Okay. I got you.
Highway Feed in Silt, is that spelled just like the normal highway you drive on? That way
No, it's HY dash Melody. If you find me, I'll get you in touch with his name is Brock, and he's fabulous. He is like Eric. He will answer any question. You can bring pictures, videos, ask him, and he's great. But it's HY dash and then the word WAY, right off of the interstate, a little bit north of I-70.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. And if you guys got questions anytime, my information, you can get it from Connie, or you can get it off our website as well too. So, or you can just hit me up on the feeding advice any ways possible. So we're here to help.
Hey, can I ask another question? You spent a good amount of time talking about the pH level in the water. So again, I sound really naive. We're on well water here, which honestly, we had an issue 3 years ago when we took them down to fair. They were on county water and they got totally dehydrated in the first 24 hours. And then we realized we have to carry our own water in. But do you, like, what, I don't understand, like, what are the consequences of too much or too little pH?
Well, yeah, you want your pH to be around a 7. You want it to be very, very neutral, obviously. And throughout different times of the year, your pH level can change, depends on the requirements and things like that. You know, Northwest Ohio and a lot of Ohio last year had a severe drought, and so I think our water table dropped a good bit, and more people were pulling water out than normal, and so our water can change throughout the year, and we're on wells and much of that as well too. But like you said, when you go to the fair, you're going to a city water system that may be a little bit different, and so that will throw them off. And if we're not prepared for those changes and utilizing electrolytes or things like that, or even a product like Fresh H2O, which is a very nice product, and I don't endorse it, but we've utilized it for several years. That's a product that will actually take the chlorination in the water, and it will turn it to salt. So you don't get that smell and that change. And I've witnessed it. And I know Kurt Steerwalt's a big cattle guy, but he introduced us to that in Oklahoma City several years ago. And I didn't really believe it until I went home and tried it myself. And I've watched animals refuse buckets of water that were straight out of the tap, essentially at a fair, because of the chlorination. And you pour that in there and they will drink a bucket of water instantly, essentially, just because it changes that chlorination instantly. So those are things to be thinking about and looking at. But yeah, your pH level can be important as we talk about urinary caliculi and buildup of mineral depositations in our system and that. But you guys can kind of test your water at your will. Whether you have a company come out and do it, you can buy strip tests, essentially like testing your pool, and just see what your pH level is. So if it's super high, maybe we'll have to have it adjusted or checked. But I've even had customers essentially just put on a water filter on their barn or their hose or things like that, and essentially get rid of a lot of their extra minerals or bacteria or whatever big contaminants in their water. So that can be helpful too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we are going to honor your time, wrap this up.
Yeah.
Eric, thank you so much because this is huge help. I learned
Yeah.
lots as well. And I know some of these parents are excited because we want to do well. We want our products and our
Yeah.
projects to make weight. But that's sometimes our biggest struggle, I think, is making weight.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Well, good. Yeah. We're glad to help.
all right, awesome. Anybody else? Last round, last call. We're good. Okay. Well, thank you so much. You guys have a great
Thank you.
night.
Thank
We'll talk
you.
soon.
Yep. Glad to help
Appreciate it.
everybody. Good luck.
All right. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay.